Okay guys, let's get right down to the build here. If you hear some feedback in my microphone, sorry, there wasn't much I could do about it. First thing I'm doing is draining as much tank water as I can into this cooler. That's where I'll be keeping the fish. I'll have a heater in there and a bubbler. So they'll have some oxygen and some heat for a couple of hours. Next, taking out all the decorations. That way it's, obviously easier to get the fish out of the tank. Okay, next I'm going to do a quick gravel vac right here. Because I will be trying to save as much water as possible, I'm going to remove as much of the waste out of the bottom as I possibly can before I take the fish out. Okay, I'm going to take the fish out of the tank. Got a couple of them at one time, but most of them were one at a time. You can see the cooler there in the lower right. I got a heater in there in my bubbler. That's where the fish are going to be at home for a while. Okay, continuing on, to drain as much water out of the tank as I can. I got a couple of coolers and a big red bin. I'm going to be saving as much tank water as I possibly can. There's the red bin, got some coolers filled up, and now the rest of the water I just got to kind of drain outside into my yard. I just didn't have any more bins or containers to save the water, but it's okay. Big water change. So that's just going out into the backyard. Now I am getting the bio wheel filters off my tank. Basically throwing everything out that's in there except for the sponges. Right there you can see in my hand the black sponge. I will be saving those for the sump. I need to continue cycling my tank with my biomedia. That is going to be filtering my tank biologically until the rest of the media grows some bacteria on it. So now that the tank is drained, me and my son are sliding it over so I can move in the stand that I built. And here's the stand, bring it in, nice and painted, cured. Actually have a fluorescent light strip, a 36-inch that I mounted underneath by the front of the stand, which I will click on later. You'll see it. That way I can see my sump for maintenance. It just makes it easier. Nice to have a light down there. Now the heavy part, lifting the tank over to the new stand. Good thing I got a teenager in the house, huh? Wasn't as heavy as it looks. I thought it was going to be a lot heavier, but it wasn't too bad. And now the entire point of this build, the sump time, to slide the sump in. Ironically, the 29-gallon was actually a lot heavier than it looked. I could have slid it in there myself. I just wanted to be careful I didn't damage anything, so my son helped me. But the opening I made in the stand worked perfect. I can slide it in and out with ease if I need to maintenance it or clean it, or if I have any issues. It slid in real easy. It was really nice. So now I'm going to pump as much of the tank water as I can into the sump. I want the sump to have as much tank water as it can first, because I will be putting my already cycled sponges in there, so I want the bacteria to stay good. And now I'm gonna, as that's filling up, hooking up my return pump. There's the bio wheel penguin filter that's just gonna be used as a return to disperse the water. Now I'm just fitting the plumbing for the return pump. I got it going around the back. I'm going to stick it over the return pump and then feed it back up. Find out the exact length I need, cut it with some scissors, and then clamp it on to the plumbing that I just put on top of the bio wheel filter. Now time for the overflow box. I'm going to fit that on the back. I tell you later, but the blue hose that's on there is a pool hose I got from Home Depot. I just slid it over the threaded bulkhead and used a hose clamp to clamp that on. Once I put that the overflow box, I fed the hose underneath to the sump and cut it. There's the intake box part, just screw on. I have a review video on that overflow box if you're interested. I think it's the video right before this. I'm not sure. Go check that out. Okay, I got the overflow box tube in there, and it's time to prime it. As you can see, I have an air line going to it. I drilled a hole into it and siliconed an air line in there right at the top, so you can just suck all that air right out of the tube, and that'll get the overflow box completely primed. I just had to fill it up with a little bit more water there, and as you can see, sucking all the air out. Alright everybody, I got everything hooked up, I believe. Here's the sump. I actually have a light in there. I installed underneath the stand, the sump. I watched this video that said fill up your sump as much as possible because it's going to drain when you start pumping it into the tank, and you don't want it to go down too low. There's my, I guess, the overflow tube going through the sponge. I got one heater in there so far. The other heater's with the fish. Got my sponge, biomedia. I've got my old sponges from my penguin filters in here, just to try to biologically filter the water till the rest of this grows bacteria. So really all I got to do is just turn on that pump. It's going to go up the tube right there, over into the penguin filter. Like I said before, I'm just using this as the return. That's it. As you can see, it's not even plugged in. This is just to disperse the water evenly. We'll see how well that works out. I got the overflow box primed. I went ahead and drilled a hole in the top and just siliconed some airline tubing with this little valve so I can suck all the air out. It was working. So right now all there is to do is plug in the pump and hope I didn't totally screw all this up. So here we go. Whoa. Oh, that's shooting out a lot of water. There we go. That's working. Oh, now the overflow starting to work. So now I can empty some water out of here because that's obviously too much. So that's cool. It's working. Alright, let's see how much of a difference this thing makes.
put this down here. Oh, wow. I guess I don't even need to put the sponge on there. Huh. Interesting. I'm not sure if you can see how fast those little bubbles are shooting through. That's actually a good thing. So no bubbles are going to gather up here and create a pocket. This is actually pretty quiet. Alright, I'm going to suck some water out of here. The only thing I'm worried about right now is the temperature of the water is really cold. I think it's going to shock my fish. It's only at like 77. I normally have it at 80. Oh, 79. Oh, looks like it's going up. $78 over here. 77. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get the other heater out of the cooler where the fish are and get that heater in there as soon as possible. Here's a light. I got that light installed up here. Whoop. Sump light. So this bio wheel filter is working really good just to disperse the water back in the tank. That's all I'm using it for. It's not plugged in. It's not even plugged in. Just have the return pump hose going in there and just giving an even distribution of water over here. The overflow is working really good. This is actually more quiet without this in there. All you do is just put that white PVC and that quieted it down a lot. It's working. I'm not sure exactly how much GPH I'm getting out of this, but I don't think it's going to matter too much. When you have a sump, you don't really need the water to get shooting through as fast as possible. You kind of want more of a slower filtration. It'll drop your ammonia and nitrites down to 0. And as you can see, I got the BioHome Ultimate Filter Media in here. This is basically what I'm using for my bio media. I got about 3-4 inches of sponge, and the BioHome, the mechanical filter is about 1.5 inches of sponge, and then more filter floss carbon. So water's coming in, going through sponge and filter floss, coming up through the heater, going over down through more filter floss and carbon. The carbon's in the little replaceable cartridges, reusable cartridges. Then it goes up through the sponge, BioHome, and for right now I have all my old sponges in there as to keep the water biologically filtered until all of this can grow some bacteria on it. I definitely need to add some all my water conditioner and stuff in here before I put the fish in. I also have this. There's my glass tops. I got to redo these. I have some extra so it'll fit the new setup over there. So I'm just going to put everything back in here and I'll show you this completely and finally set up. Alright everybody, the sump is done. Sump build done, up and running. I got the fish back in here. They're not too happy. Actually, they're a lot happier now than they were a second ago in the cooler. But trying to get the temperature back up, I believe I had to crank the heaters. I don't think that's correct. 76, it was at 80, I don't know what's going on. I cranked my heaters up. It'll take a little bit for the temperature to warm up. We'll see how this works with the heaters just in the sump. But I'll go over what I did. First off, 29-gallon sump here with a 75-gallon tank. My return pump is an Aqua Top 607 GPH. I forget the model number. I have a video on it. Go back and check it out. The tubing I got going back up, as you can see, I'm not using any elbows. Just a flexible tubing, just going all the way up. The only elbows is at the top right there. The less elbows, the less restriction you got. Overflow Box is the eShop's PF300. I did a little alteration I just showed you about earlier, drilling a hole, adding air tubing there so I can suck the air out whenever. When I'm not using it, I just put the air line just straight back into there. So in case it happens to suck anything from there, it's just going to suck the water back there. Hopefully no one ever breaks that off there. I did go ahead and put the sponge in there. That did actually quiet it down. This is pretty quiet, honestly. This tubing I got at Home Depot is just like pool. You're like a backyard pool tubing. I just slid that over the threaded bulkhead, clamped it, and that just goes straight down. All the way down into the sump, which what I was hoping would quiet the water. There wouldn't be as noisy as the water coming down, and I am correct. It's you could hear it a little bit, but it's not bad. Water seems to be clearing up pretty good too. It's a little bit foggier than it looks on the video, but it's clearing up, and with all that media in there. And the cool thing about this, I can always put some bags of lava rock in there, leave those sponges in there, and what that is going to do is I can actually have cycled biomedia that I can just add to any fish tank if I'm setting it up. So you can already see some debris getting in there. But it's working. It's working. I tried to show you every step that I could. I'll give you an update here in a couple of days or a week, tell you how the fish are doing. One cool thing, when you're looking at it from here, everything's out of the tank except for the overflow box. That's the only thing you see. There's no heaters in there. There's no intake tubes for the filters. You can't even see the return penguin filter there. So everything's out of the tank. And I got my little light for the sump. Alright guys, thanks for watching. That's the build. You guys take care out there.